Ready to move to the next level in your product career? I'm Shobit from Intentional Product Manager. Join me as we discuss ways to help you stand out in your job search and your career so you can have more impact and make more money. Hey everyone, welcome to the Intentional Product Manager podcast, where we help you grow your career with confidence, clarity, and leadership. Today's guest is a powerhouse in AI product management. She's currently a director of product at Netflix, has led transformative work in ML platforms at Etsy, core AI at Facebook, and even launched the world's first deep learning enabled developer kit at AWS or Amazon Web Services. So if you're building or scaling AI native products, you'll want to take notes. Jyothi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Shobit.
Excellent. So with that amazing background, Jyothi, I just want to begin with some icebreakers just to get going. Look, your resume reads like a tour of the AI product world. AWS, Facebook AI, Etsy, Netflix. So if your career were a Netflix original, what would be the title?
Very interesting question. So not many of them know that I have a biotech background actually. So I started as a graduate in biotechnology and then worked in a leading pharma company on oncology research before actually moving into AI. So if I had to think about my career as a whole, as a Netflix original, I would say lab coat to LLMs.
Great. Okay, let's go back in time. You mentioned biotech. That doesn't scream AI, although I could understand where it could be applied to. So tell us, what was your first ever aha moment with AI that got you interested in AI?
Yeah, I think this was way back in 2012 when a few friends and we competed in a forensic science competition. And the competition was to predict the age of a person from biological samples. So say a 1 nanogram or a 10 nanogram, very small amount of DNA sample. And we actually developed a technology that predicts the biological age of a person with such a small sample load within 24 hours using something called next generation sequencing technology. So I actually used machine learning algorithms way back in 2012 to improve the accuracy of the predictions to an unimaginable range at that time. Like an accuracy of plus or minus 5 years was totally not unheard of then. So we actually received an award from the European Research Council. And then later we got a customer. We signed a non-exclusive license agreement with a company called Human Longevity Institute to develop the technology and apply it for various use cases.
Jyothi, so we are here to talk about building AI native products as our next area of focus. And I know you've been doing some sessions on Maven. So I'm curious, what's maybe one insight that resonated a lot with your audience?
Yeah. So one thing is I don't teach on Maven. I teach on my own course website called Next Gen Product Manager. But yes, I did lead a Maven session recently on AI native PMs. So the idea that really clicked with the group was that AI native PMs, they aren't just shipping features. They are managing uncertainty. So if you think about it, a lot of traditional products, the output is quite deterministic. So you click a button, you get a result. But with AI, the output is probabilistic. So it's no longer about how does it work, but more about how well does it work, for which groups, and in what context. So that mind shift really landed in that session during that session for our users. And something that clearly folks were asking and we had several questions on was around how PMs now need to think less in terms of fixed specs and more in terms of guardrails, the thresholds, the continuous feedback. And we also talked about how important it is to deeply understand model behavior, things like your performance variation, the bias of your models, the data quality, and how all of that translates into decisions that make sense for your users and your business. So it's this whole new kind of product management where there is less uncertainty, or rather less certainty and more stewardship.
I agree with you. I mean, the reason the job exists is because of ambiguity. And we're adding another element of ambiguity with AI. So let's talk about AI native products. A lot of people, a lot of teams still treat AI as an add on. What makes a product truly AI native?
Yeah. So a lot of teams still bolt AI onto existing products, and in that panel session, actually, one of my friend Vikash, he had a very nice analogy that I'm going to steal even for this session here. Is he said, if you think of it like a cupcake, people are treating AI like a sprinkle on top of the cake rather than the cake itself. And so a truly AI native product is one where AI is the core capability. It is not just like some seasoning on a dish or something like that, or like some widget or a chat bot that you just tack onto your product. So truly AI native products is like one where if you remove the AI, would the product still work? And if the answer is no, then you're looking at something AI native. So it's not just about using machine learning for the sake of using it. It's about designing around AI's strengths and limitations from day one. So what that means is that you're embracing probabilistic outcomes instead of deterministic ones. You're designing with feedback loops as part of your product itself, and that your product learns over time. And you're building trust mechanisms like your transparency and user control. And you're also prioritizing model performance and data quality as first class citizens in product strategy. So the way to think about it is, in an AI native product, PMs aren't just choosing features, they are like actually crafting the experience that is shaped by the model behavior. And so that changes everything from like how we, like scope our MVPs to how we measure success.
Amazing. Okay, let's talk about the other side of it. By the way, I love the sprinklers analogy. And my analogy was similar. It was like back in the day when I was new into cooking, I would make something, inevitably it will be bad, and I would just pour some hot sauce on it and, it tasted okay. And that was the answer. And seems like that's what many teams are trying to do.
Yeah, there are some classic traps that I see, and that those are probably some of the things that also highlight in my course for my students as well. So one is teams that start with the model and not the problem. Like, teams start with like, oh, which algorithm do I go with? Do I start with transformers? How about the latest LLM? How does Quen measure with Llama? Here, that they're feeling the pressure to be AI first, but what they have clearly not identified is what's the problem that we are trying to solve for. And this lack of thinking from a problem first mindset, user first mindset, leads to over engineering solutions that users don't actually need or want. And many teams also assume that AI is like some turn on key that you can like just open and then tack it on, it will work. They don't understand the amount of data you need for AI, like the clear, clean, well-structured data pipelines that needs to exist. And they would go too far into their project and realize that it fails because 80% of the actual AI initiative is actually data engineering work. The sexy model building is probably just 20% of the effort. And so data, model, and then treating AI like a feature and not a system where, like sprint 6, let's just add AI to it. That's not how you work with an AI product. So it needs data loops. You need to make sure there's monitoring, there's evaluation, there's constant iteration. So I see a lot of teams underestimate the ongoing investment, even after like not just building, but sometimes they'll think, oh, you build it once, you ship it, and you can like move your hands away from it. But that's not how it works. You need to like continuously monitor, continuously retrain your model, account for model drifts, data drift. All of that is usually an afterthought.
Thank you for sharing all those examples, which seem to have AI on top. What would be an example of a product that either you're familiar with or you work with where building AI native from the ground up really changed the trajectory and gave a different experience?
Yeah. So I think one story that I can share is from my time at AWS Deep Lens. So AWS Deep Lens is like an AI-powered camera which is designed for developers. So initially, the team thought of it as just hardware with AI support. And the plan was to give developers a device that could run pre trained models locally. But here's the twist. Like once we started treating Deep Lens as an AI native product, not just a device with AI features, a lot of things changed. So instead of asking like, can we run inference on the edge? We reframed the whole product experience around rebuilding the onboarding so developers could deploy and fine tune models, creating workflows for camera input being fed into like real time object detection models, and also making model performance metrics and explainability part of the core UI. And for me, the biggest shift was that we stopped thinking of the camera as the hero, and instead we started thinking of the AI system in whole, like the model, the data, the feedback loops, all as the product. And so that shift actually changed from our being feature focused to actually becoming AI native. And so we went from something like a niche developer tool to something that inspired hundreds and thousands of hackathon projects, prototypes across enterprises. And all of this changed because of that shift. And I see that time and again as well in like how external products too. Like I don't know if you have used Grammarly, but Grammarly approaches writing assistants in a very AI centric way rather than how traditional like word processors do grammar checking. So like on Microsoft Word, you'd see that squiggly lines, which is helpful, but not too helpful for users. But Grammarly like built an AI native product from day one. So instead of treating AI as a feature addition, they designed the entire product experience around continuous contextual writing assistance. And so the key insight was, they didn't ask, how do we add AI to writing software? They asked if we rebuilt writing software around AI capabilities, what would that look like?
Grammarly is one of my favorite AI native products, as well as Descript, which is a video editor, which is very much you're editing videos as if you're editing pure text. So I love stuff like that. So we cannot really talk about AI without talking about one of the most important skill sets, especially for product managers, which is AI evaluations or evals, as people call it, and the metrics associated with AI. So you've had fairly extensive experience in AI. How do you approach setting up evals for AI capabilities?
To think of it, start with user metrics, not model metrics. It's important to track model metrics, but it's far more important to translate how that model metrics converts into user-centric outcomes or behaviors. Also, building evaluation into the product experience itself. So the best teams take feedback collection and make it an AI, like a native product feature. Like your thumbs up and down or this help buttons, they're all implicit signals that helps us understand whether users accepted those suggestions. Was it helpful? And then creating this continuous evaluation loop based on understanding the sentiment. Far more product managers realize you need to have this thumbs up and down, but then that is not feeding back into the model. That is just living as one static feature. So building evaluation into the product experience and testing edge cases, understanding when your model fails, in what use cases does your model fail, is very important. I have seen teams create something called test suites that specifically probe for like model weaknesses, biased outputs, or confusing edge cases that real users will encounter. In my AI PM class, I actually talk about a framework that I give to our users. It's called GRACE, which is starting with like goals, around are we solving the right problem, the teams that get obsessed about whether the AI can solve trivia questions correctly is not important as much as does the answer that the AI give, is that actually helpful for your users. So let's say if you're building an AI agent to help plan a team offsite, success is not about spitting a bulleted list. It's about whether they can actually walk away with something that they can use. The part of the GRACE framework is reliability, which is can users depend on it. This is where a lot of AI products fall apart because your agent works great in demos, but it's very unpredictable in the wild. Then it is autonomy is the right level of helpfulness part of your agent. And that's the finding the sweet spot between a useless chatbot that can't do anything or an overconfident agent that makes decisions it shouldn't. And then it's the calibration, which is the C of the GRACE, is how does it know what it doesn't know? And this is the most important one, is your AI needs to be honest about its limitations. Like when it's confident, it should usually be right. And when it's uncertain, it should say so clearly and get more information. Most AI products fail because they're either overconfident about everything, or they hedge so much that they become useless at that point in time. And then the last one is E, which is experience, is does this feel natural? Because at the end of the day, if your AI doesn't fit into how people actually work, then it doesn't matter how technically impressive it is.
Look, you pointed out some very interesting things. Sometimes, even while working with my client, we've built our own AI tools to help them. But sometimes AI is way too confident. It comes up with achievements which they never had. And so we need to be extra careful in adopting what the AI has provided them. Thanks for sharing that. So let me talk about some overlooked metrics that product managers should care about, but they're often overlooked. Would love to hear from you about that.
That's a very good question. Most PMs focus on technical accuracy, but ignore the confidence, the model confidence score in the predictions. So for example, a model that's 80% accurate but knows when it's uncertain is often more valuable than the one that's 85% accurate but overconfident. So PMs need to know what thresholds to set for model confidence for the result to be applicable. The second most overlooked metric is when AI features break or produce bad outputs, how can the system recover? That whole falling back gracefully is needed. And so that is something that needs to be thought about ahead of time. And that's where those test suites that I had mentioned help you identify what are those boundaries where it fails, and then what are the fallback mechanisms that you need to implement. And then the last one I would say is the data and model drift. Many PMs think it's all about launching a feature, not about maintaining that model. Data, user behavior, they all shift. What worked last month may not work now. So monitoring for that drift helps you know when to retrain or intervene. And then a last bonus one which I'll give is designing with responsible AI in mind, understanding how your metrics that you choose, the model that you choose, how is it impacting the different user groups? How is the model behaving across the different user groups that your users will use the product? And understanding what explanations are part of your model so that your users can get an understanding of how the model made that choice.
Got it. So next question. Let's sort of combine both of these. I know you mentioned starting with user metrics, then you discussed the more modern metrics that product managers overlook. So how do you ensure products and engineering teams get aligned on what good looks like when it comes to, say, AI performance?
Yeah, I think the core important thing here is starting with the user, not the model. So before diving into metrics, we should get super clear on what the user experience looks like. So for example, as a PM, I would ask, what does success look like for the user? This anchors the conversation and impact. Like we are not now discussing on what is the F1 score that's needed. We are anchoring the conversation and, like, for example, like, should the user trust the top 3 recommendations? How confident should those top 3 recommendations be? Is more actionable than saying, I want a 90% model accuracy. So, starting with user and not the model, also creating shared evaluation data sets, because once you start building your test suite together, product will bring in the edge cases from user research, whereas engineering will add the technical stress tests that it needs to add. And then both teams are looking at the same examples of what good output means and what bad output looks like. And so then conversations become much more concrete. And another thing that I found very helpful is establishing like a band or a range for performance rather than a pointed target. So, like, instead of saying like 95% accuracy, define like, here is good enough for autonomous action. Like, if it's 98% and better, then it's good for autonomous action. But if it is 85 to 98% accuracy or confidence level, then you'd say it's good enough with human review. Or you'd say, like, if it is less than 85%, it's just not ready. So this tiering will give engineering flexibility while selecting the product expectations.
We spoke a lot about metrics, evals, AI native products. I think we would really miss a major part if we didn't talk about careers of product management or careers of product managers in this AI world. So let's first begin with your career. You've grown from launching products hands-on to leading teams at scale as director at Netflix. What was the hardest leadership shift for you personally?
The hardest shift for me was moving from actually doing the work to creating the conditions for great work. So early in my career, I was an IC, right? When I was launching deep lens or experimenting with AI features, I was hands-on with everything, the models, the roadmaps, the metrics, customer feedback. Directly, I could see the impact of my choices. It was super energizing. But as I started moving into leading larger teams, I realized that my job isn't to be the smartest person in the room. It's to make space for others to thrive. And so that meant learning to, like, step back from the how and focusing on aligning on the why. Trading the speed for clarity and trust and autonomy. And usually it's in me to, like, if I see a problem, I just like to jump in and go just fix it. But instead, I needed to, like, take a step back to say, like, how do I coach through ambiguity? And so that's a muscle where you still need very strong product intuition. But now it's in the service of unlocking others, not driving every decision yourself. And honestly, the hardest part was realizing that if everything depends on me, then I've actually failed as a leader.
Everything depends on you. If you fail as a leader, everyone fails. One of the people that I follow, they call it, as a leader, you should be the lighter fluid and not the log. I love that. It's like, you should not be driving day to day. It's not that things fall out without you, but you can add fuel to the fire. So we talked a bit about leadership shifts. So we're also going to talk about AI and product management. What do product managers struggle with most when it comes to learning about AI?
Actually, so if you see, even in my course, when people start, they would think about, like, we need to learn about transformers, neural networks to be credible. But that's like thinking you need to, like, understand combustion engines to become a good Uber PM, for example. So the real skill in understanding what AI can and can't do for users, understanding how to translate between technical and business teams is more important, not just learning how backpropagation works. So fluency in AI product management isn't about sounding technical, like how it's about asking better questions. Like, can you hire a PM who understands the technical concepts, but as a PM challenges and asks better questions, better clarity, breaks down the ambiguity into clarity. That's what hiring managers want. They don't want a second engineer. They want someone who can translate this complexity into clarity. Like asking questions like, how does this AI powered feature enhance the user experience? Or how do you measure user satisfaction? Or how does this current AI model align with the overall product strategy? And like what impact does it have on user experience or business goals? And what data do we have to train our model? Like, this doesn't mean you must be like the smartest person in the room. It's just someone who can like turn messy data and shifting context into something clear, testable product decisions.
A follow-up question to that, Jyothi. I see like very user-centric PMs who understand what users need really well. They're very skilled, very empathetic. And then there's highly technical PMs, almost an engineer. What's the sweet spot for product managers as far as their technical skills, especially when it relates to AI?
Sweet spot for a product manager would be someone who understands user problems, but also learns the language of AI, not to the extent of becoming a PhD in that subject, but more from how do you understand the technical concepts to translate it into business outcomes. Like you need to know just enough to understand what's the difference between precision, recall, bias. What does that mean? How does that impact for my use case? You're translating you're still focusing on the business outcome, but you're translating the technical concept to see what does it mean for my user experience. Why training data matters. What sort of training data distribution should exist? And I see that when PMs prototype and learn by doing, they get the most understanding than just theoretical knowledge. Because that's when you know when something breaks. So actually in my product manager course, it's Next Gen Product Manager, my students learn how to evaluate and integrate AI into the product strategy. So we do 6+ hands-on projects. So they build all the way from like AI agents, they build custom GPTs, they build prototypes, and they actually leave with a capstone project that shows how you can design an AI native product end to end, all the way from identifying user problem, shaping the model experience, evaluating performance, and then shipping responsibly. So understanding by doing is probably the best way for someone who wants to be in this field.
Okay. So let's end by adding a couple of rapid fire questions. What's the favorite failure that you've had?
Onboarding user experience for an AI product is as important as the product user experience itself.
One book that every AI product manager should read.
The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. I know it sounds weird for AI PMs to think like, hey, it's not about machine learning at all, but I think it's the best book for understanding how to design systems that people can actually use and build trust.
That's great. I love Design of Everyday Things. Don Norman was actually my teacher during my MBA. So that book is very near and dear to my heart. Last but not least, if you were not in product management, what would you be doing?
I would either be a teacher or an artist.
Awesome. Jyothi, thank you so much. I learned a lot about AI native products, your take on product management and AI. Once again, where can folks find you and follow your work?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn, Jyothi Nookula. And you can also learn more about my course on nextgenproductmanager.com.
Perfect. We'll be sure to put the LinkedIn profile and your website in the show notes. Now, whether you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, check out in the show notes. You can find this. Thank you again, Jyothi. And to our listeners, if you found this valuable, make sure you share it with someone who's looking to break into or enhance their career in AI product leadership. Don't forget to subscribe. And until next time, keep building intentionally. And see you soon. Hey, be sure to check out our website at intentionalproductmanager.com to see how you can level up in your career.